Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 77 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. I am joined today by the best faceless co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover Radio Show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Mark, technical issues aside, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. It's funny. Last week, we did the entire podcast. I was looking at you. I was looking at myself. I saw my camera. I thought the people could see me. And then I would go back and look at it, and I'm a dark screen the whole time. So, this week, at least I know going in that the people can't see me. Last week, I'm making faces. I'm doing jokes, whatever. And people can't even see me. It was all for naught.
Yeah, last week it was weird. I couldn't see either one of us. You could see both of us. We had no idea. And then when I went to go pull clips later, I realized my camera worked and yours didn't. I still don't know what happened to that. But here we are. We made it through. That midweek, or the mid-season, we're podcasting through some injuries right now. It's a little sloppy, but we're hoping we hit final form in time for the playoffs. That's where we're at right now as a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm day to day. I'm on the injury report. I'm questionable for this week.
So just to give you guys a little peek behind the curtain as we dive into this week's show, it's a little bit of a running bit that almost every week when I send Mark the link for the show, he'll say, I don't really have that much to say this week. I think we can get this one in under an hour. And if you've been a long time listener to the show, you should chuckle at that because I don't think we've turned in an episode under an hour and 20 minutes in like 6 months. But today, if there's ever a time, if it doesn't happen today, we are never getting you back below the hour time limit again because the Eagles are on a bye week. There were some sloppy games this weekend. I really don't feel like I have a lot to say about some of these games. So this is it. This is the true test. If we're ever turning in a podcast under an hour in length, it's this week. Mark, are you up to the challenge?
I'll one up your challenge. I think we can do this in under a half hour. But you know what? I'll say 40 minutes. I think we can do it in under 40 minutes.
I don't know. There's probably some people on Wednesday morning right now that have an hour drive to work that are panicking hearing us say this because they don't know what they're going to do for the rest of their drive. So hang in there if that's you. We'll see where we land here. We're just messing with people's routines, Mark. Like, I listen to podcasts, a lot of podcasts, and I just know how long they are. I know, I'm cleaning the kitchen. I can listen to one of these. Or, I've got to run to go get groceries. This is the length I need. So we're going to mess with people this week. I'm sure we'll be back into our normal form next week. But let's dive into it here. We're going to start with the Thursday night game. No Eagles game to lead off with this week as they were on their bye. So we'll start with Thursday night in a game that matters for the Eagles as the New Orleans Saints traveled to the desert to play Arizona. They lose 34-42. The Eagles pick acquired via the Saints sits at number 4 overall right now via Tankathon. The Cardinals trailed in this game early 7-3. But they took a 28-14 halftime lead thanks to pick sixes on back-to-back drives. And Mark, did you see the clip that was going around on Twitter of Andy Dalton's look as the defender dove into the end zone all the way across the field? Did you see that?
Oh, it's iconic. That's iconic, Andy Dalton. I saw it tweeted out with the stat of where he moved up into in the all-time pick six rankings. I forget exactly where that was, but it's pretty high.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that, I think I saw it first from Warren Sharp. It's been out there everywhere, though. Go look that up. I'll try to find it and retweet it later, but just iconic shot. That's definitely the shot, the cinematic of the season so far. So the biggest news, I think, in this game for Arizona, what matters most for them is that DeAndre Hopkins is back. He had 14 targets in this game. That translated to 10 receptions, 403 yards. So Hopkins is back, and now it's a 9-day layover for the Cards. So they've got 9 days to get ready for Minnesota, to get DeAndre Hopkins integrated back into the offense, to get Robbie Anderson, who they recently acquired from the Panthers, comfortable in the offense, and, of course, for Kyler Murray to learn the new Call of Duty maps when it comes out this weekend. So, Mark, what did you take away from this game?
Yeah, I gotta be honest. What I took away from this game is that they need to stop putting terrible games in prime time. I mean, I guess you know what? I won't kill them as much for this. Like Kyler Murray is at least one of the more entertaining quarterbacks to watch. So I won't say I won't kill them as much as I will for Commanders Bears or whatever that was what it was, right? Commanders Bears. Yeah,
Yeah, that was last week's.
that was last week. Yeah. So I won't kill them quite as much. But did we? I'm sorry if I zoned out because I was actually looking for a stat for this game that I couldn't quite find. But did we mention the Kyler Murray talking to Cliff Kingsbury,
I
um,
did
and,
not.
and and the rumors on what he was saying?
I didn't.
You care to elaborate? I know you're with me on Fire Cliff Corner.
Yeah, and I think so. Kyler was hot during the game. It's the second week in a row that he's been seen yelling at Kingsbury, if I remember correctly. This time, I think it was DeAndre Hopkins was there to kind of pull him aside. So I guess DeAndre Hopkins is playing the go-between right now for Kyler and Cliff. Is that what's going on?
I guess so. I guess he's the mediator, but I believe he told I won't curse because it's a family show, but I believe he said calm the f down to Cliff Kingsbury, which is a funny thing for your quarterback to tell your head coach. It's just an interesting situation. Arizona, even though they won the game, that was the thing I saw. Besides the Andy Dalton picture that you mentioned, that was the thing I saw going around most about this game. So even in a game you win, even in a game your offense kind of gets right, there's more non-cohesion between the two most important people in your organization. And by the way, I talked about what you said last week regarding Steve Keim. I actually went on the Gambler this week. On Sean Brace's show on Thursday on the Daily Ticket, and asked him if he was aware that the Arizona Cardinals have had the same GM since 2013. I don't think enough people know that the Cardinals have had the same GM for 9 years. The Cardinals have not been good enough to have the same GM for 9 years. But anyway, none of this rant makes sense because the Cardinals won this game. I just thought because that was last week and I brought it up on radio, I wanted to properly credit you here, and I did. I believe I gave you a shout out when I said it, but it is quite interesting, this situation in Arizona, and it's most interesting because the teams, they're not completely out of it now. That win kind of puts you in a situation in the NFC where are there good teams? We don't even know. So if you're 3-4, you're a couple wins away from being in the driver's seat of the playoff race, or maybe even in the division in that division.
Yeah, it's the most interesting sideshow in the NFL right now, in my opinion. Just it feels like there's an implosion coming, a fallout between Kyler and Cliff, guys who both just got extended. It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and it seems like this is a long-term marriage. Like I don't know how you fire Cliff a year into a 5-year deal that they just gave him, and I don't know how you do anything with Kyler now that wouldn't completely hamstring your cap on getting rid of him. So I mean, they're gonna have to figure this out.
We're going to have some fun off-season podcasts trying to figure out what the Cardinals are going to do, that's for sure.
I totally agree.
Okay, let's get into our Sunday slate now. The Cleveland Browns traveling to Baltimore. Baltimore wins 23-20. If you were going to characterize the Ravens' season this year, it would be that they have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory time and time again. And honestly, I thought that was going to happen again on Sunday when Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who, by the way, we loved in the draft, still regret that he's not an Eagle, when he forced a fumble by Justice Hill to get the ball back to Cleveland under 3 minutes left, you just had to think it's going to happen again, right? They're going to blow another double-digit lead late in a game. And honestly, they probably should have. There was an offensive pass interference call on an Amari Cooper touchdown pass that was shaky at best.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cade York has the 60-yard field goal attempt that would have tied the game, blocked by Malik Harrison, and the Ravens hang on to win. It's got to feel good for the Ravens to get the fourth quarter monkey off their back. They're very much alive in the AFC North, along with the Bengals, who had a big, impressive win this week. What did you take away from this one?
My takeaway is that this Ravens team is not very good. I really don't think they're good. I really think something is going on health wise with Lamar. I know he was on the injury report this week, where people kind of made fun of that he was pulling a little bit of a Russell Wilson, where you miss some throws, and then all of a sudden you show up on the injury report. But he's missing throws that just aren't characteristic of what we've seen with Lamar over the last year or two now. I know that that's going to sound off to some people who don't think he's a good thrower, but he developed into, in my opinion, one of the 10 to 12 best passers in the NFL for sure. Is that a fair statement to say, Shane?
Yeah, and the way he's playing, it's not even like he's having a down year. He was playing very well at the start of the year. Like, all of the talk was about how his weakness was facing the blitz, and he had come out and he had solved that. He was playing so well. In this game, they ran the ball 44 times, and they only threw it 16 times. Lamar went 9 of 16 for 120 yards. That's just not a typical game. It definitely feels like something is going on there.
Yeah, and this is after 2 straight weeks of missing pretty crazy passes. One on prime time against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago, where he missed a couple wide open guys there and 1 touchdown. But this is a game, Cleveland wins if they just do one of many things. Obviously, the Cooper OPI, they had a fumble earlier in the game. They had a missed kick in the game. They had a failed fourth down conversion at one point. Like, Cleveland had so many chances to take this game over and to win this game. You mentioned the Ravens snatched defeat from the jaws of victory many times this year. The Cleveland Browns are like, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't forget us. Oh, that's all we do. And if you look at their record, they have lost so many close games at this point. And you know what? As the NFL community, we can kind of clap our hands and root for that, because hopefully in week 13, when Deshaun Watson comes back, they are in a state of irrelevance. That would be the best case scenario. I'm extremely happy that they're not sitting here at 4-3, and we'd be sitting here having to have an uncomfortable conversation about what their potential was, because I think it'd be pretty high if that was the case. So I'm pretty happy to see them lose this game. I'm pretty happy to see Lamar get the win. But just speaking in terms of long term, I thought Cleveland probably deserved to win this game. I thought they probably outplayed Baltimore in this game, had a couple tough breaks. But, I guess this is the balancing of the scales. Baltimore lost all these close games. Now they get to win one. And, Cleveland, like I said, has lost a ton of close games. Maybe the scales don't balance if you don't have Lamar Jackson, basically. So even though Lamar Jackson had a bad game, he was able to give them a ton on the ground. And that's always kind of what he's going to be able to give you at an absolute floor. And that was enough to beat Cleveland.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving here. Let's go to Carolina, where one of the most shocking results of the season, as Carolina, days after selling off Christian McCaffrey, they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 21-3. The story of this game was the first drive. Mike Evans, that touchdown pass that he drops on the first drive of the game, it hits his hands, it goes off like his shoulder, his helmet, it bounced 20 yards in front of him. It was kind of crazy. They would go on to score 3 points in the whole game. Per Next Gen Stats, he had 10.9 yards of separation on that drop, which is the largest amount of separation on any drop this season. And after the game, he said that he saw the life go out of the team after that. And I just think that's so telling about what's going on in Tampa right now. Like, really? The life went out of you. It felt impossible to overcome a drop on the third play of the game against the worst team in the NFL, who's starting PJ Walker. That's just absurd. The Bucs are in such a bad place right now. And, in this game, they go 2 of 12 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down. That's a 20% success rate on third and fourth down. Brady has been held to 3 or fewer points 5 times in his career, and 3 of them are in the last 7 games. Nobody is doing less with more than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now.
Yeah, I came on here last week and said I was extremely confident that they'd figure it out and they'd get back on track, not just this week, but in general. And man, this is a tough loss to swallow for that take. It's tough to just continue on saying they're going to be fine after watching that game. And obviously, I'm not going to kill the defense, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to blame it on the defense in a game where Brady and the offense scored 3 points. I will just say the cornerstone of a Todd Bowles defense and the cornerstone of these Tampa Bay Buccaneers teams as of late has been stopping the run. You give up 15 carries for 118 yards to Deonta Foreman. You give up all these yards to Chuba Hubbard. I think it's something like 10 carries for 68 yards.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on with the Bucs defense? And then I saw some quote from Todd Bowles basically saying that they were completely broken as a team right now. And it's like, man,
You can't say that. You
yeah,
cannot say that.
yeah, man.
That's our job. That's our
Yeah,
job to say
yeah.
you're completely broken because you are. Like, you can't say that as the head coach. Like, I don't know. I there's so much talent in Tampa, and it's such a weak division. But man, it really feels like they're just on the verge of falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, and it's hard to look past the Brady freakouts and the things he's saying in the media and all of the reports on the off the field stuff with Brady. Man, I think this might be it. I think Father Time kind of caught up to him a little bit at this point. If not Father Time for performance reasons, I think it caught up to him in other ways. So he probably should have just stayed home and taken his gazillion dollars to announce for Fox.
Yeah, yeah, maybe so. I don't feel like Brady has been that bad.
No, he hasn't.
Honestly,
He hasn't.
he's been, but it's just been an awful situation. But I don't hate seeing it. So you sold your soul for the Super Bowl, Tampa, and it is what it is now.
Totally agree.
So, okay, let's move on to another game in this division. It was the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. They get blasted. They lose 35-17. The Bengals, I will credit. This is something I won't do very often. I'll give some credit to Zach Taylor. I thought they adjusted well in this game. For really even going back to last year, the Bengals have had two separate offenses. They have gotten under center to run the ball. They've gotten in the shotgun to throw the ball. And under center was not working. The Bengals finally abandoned getting under center. They let it fly from the shotgun. And Burrow put up 481 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown in this game. And so it feels like maybe they're starting to figure that out. They were getting some RPO things going. They need to be able to run the ball from the shotgun to make this work long term. But it was nice to see them start to figure things out here. And I know you've got some thoughts on the Bengals, but before we get there, I just want to rant about the Falcons again for a minute.
Uh-oh.
Marcus Mariota went 8 of 13 passing for 124 yards and a touchdown, which was a 75-yard touchdown to Damari Byrd. You take that one 75-yard touchdown away, he threw for under 50 yards in this game. They were down 28-17 at half. So, 2-score game at halftime. Not ever close. Mariota went 3 of 6 passing with 11 net passing yards in the second half. Can we just play Desmond Ridder already? Like, in the last 4 weeks, Marcus Mariota has topped 19 passing attempts one time. His passing yardage high in the last 4 weeks is under 150 yards, 147. You spent the number 4 pick last year on Kyle Pitts, a tight end. He was fantastic as a rookie. He's got 178 yards through 6 games. You spent the number 8 overall pick, I think, on Drake London, a wide receiver. Now, he has 10 receptions for 110 yards. If you combine his last 4 games, he has 101 yards. It could not be more clear that they do not want Marcus Mariota to throw the ball. And if you're at that place, put Desmond Ridder in. Can he not run the ball, hand it off, and throw 12 passes a game? I really don't understand the insistence on trotting Marcus Mariota out there week after week when he is actively handicapping your team.
Yeah, and I totally agree in these situations where they're down. The funny thing is, in the close games and in the games where they have to grind it out, where they get up, I do understand why they want him in there as a guy that's not going to make mistakes and is just going to run and run the offense and run play action once in a while. And I understand that. And I understand with them being 3-3 and in or are they 4-3 actually or 3-4? I'm sorry.
If they win next week, they could be in first place in their division,
Yeah,
which
I
is kind
mean,
of crazy.
yeah, that division is just so bad. So I understand why Atlanta is putting Mariota in there right now. I do think we are another blowout or bad game away from Mariota or them falling out of contention away from Ritter coming in.
Well, the good news, I guess, for Falcons fans is that division's so bad. I don't think anybody's going to fall out of contention. They're 3-4, tied with the Buccaneers for first place, and that's only one game ahead of the Panthers and the Saints.
Yeah, I don't think the Panthers and Saints are going to win that division at all. So I still think it's going to come down to Tampa and Atlanta.
Yeah. So, but you're getting excited. You're buying back in on the Bengals. Talk to me about what you're seeing from the Bengals right now.
I think the Bengals are the fourth best team in the NFL. How about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. I'm not sure who the fourth best team is. Like, it feels like there's a clear top three, and then after that, we sit here and we ask, are any of these teams good? And they all, there's a lot of teams that have cases. Dallas, if the offense can get on track. The Giants, if they can keep eking out these games, we'll talk about the Giants later. I'm not buying it still. The 49ers, if their defense can get healthy, the Bengals, like there's a lot of teams that have caveats, but the Bengals certainly you could make an argument they're the fourth best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I'm all in at this point. I think I'm going to take a look at some futures. I actually cashed out of a future I had from the preseason of the Bengals to miss the playoffs, which I actually cashed out with a bit of a profit. So I guess the odds are better now than when I got them. So I think that this is a team outside of the Chiefs and Bills and Eagles. I think they're if you were to ask me outside of that top three, who's the most likely to go on a run to the Super Bowl or to go on a run in the playoffs and make a deep run, I think I'd say Cincinnati because obviously we saw them do it before. We obviously saw them get hot and do it last year. So they have all the same guys on that team. But the path is also there because everything I laid out with Baltimore earlier on when we talked about Ravens Browns, I don't think that Ravens team is special at all. I don't think that they scare me. I think the Bengals are a good amount better. I feel like the Bengals played their worst possible game and lost by 1 point on the road in prime time 2 weeks ago against Baltimore. So I think that Cincinnati is in a position to put themselves in a spot where Joe Burrow is capable of dragging this team to the playoffs. And just like last year, we might be in a situation where Cincinnati's defense isn't getting enough credit because you look at the amount of points they're giving up on a weekly basis. They gave up 17 points to the Falcons, like you said. And obviously, Atlanta's been so efficient at running the football. Cincinnati kind of sniffed that out and shut that down a little bit, or at least a lot more than we've seen from a ton of these teams. They didn't have a great defensive performance against New England. New Orleans, rather. That was a little bit of a weird game. That was back and forth, and the way that Burrow was throwing the ball up and down the field kind of put their defense in a tough position. They shut down Baltimore to 19 points. They held Miami to 15 points. They held the Jets to 12 points, which at the time felt normal. Maybe now looking back, it might be a little bit more impressive that they were shutting Brees Hall down and shutting that offense down. I think that this Bengals defense might be one of the top 10 defenses in the NFL. And if you're telling me that the Bengals have a top 10 defense and you have Burrow and Jamar on the other side of the ball, and with Joe Mixon, obviously, who hasn't been necessarily as good as you'd like him to be, but he's still Joe Mixon, man, I think that we're talking about a team that might be capable of doing what they did last year.
Yeah, it will definitely be worth watching. You have to feel like they're favorites to win their division. And then if they get to the playoffs, we'll see what happens. We certainly saw what happened last year when they got to the playoffs.
And I'm at a point right now where I think Joe Burrow has an argument as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, this guy, what he did this week, watching this game, it reminded me of Burrow at LSU. And it's kind of the same thing as 2 weeks ago against the Saints, obviously, in the Superdome where he won his national championship. But him and Jamar have found their stride again in terms of kind of just knowing exactly where they want each other to be on every given play. And it really feels like this Bengals offense is just an absolute nightmare. And by the way, real quick nugget. Everyone talks about Jamar Chase, and I also feel like T. Higgins gets a lot of buzz and a lot of praise. And there's all those people that like to do like the everyone talks about Jamar, but T. Higgins is a star too. Like I feel like everyone talks about that. What I'll throw out there, Tyler Boyd is one of the best number 3 wide receivers in the entire NFL. You look at what he did the last 2 weeks. I do a segment on my Tough Cover Radio show every Saturday, talking about my favorite deep fantasy flex option, which I call the Love Me Flexy Start of the Week, which is an ode to semi-pro. Any movie fans out there? But mine this week was Tyler Boyd. He went off. So not only do the Bengals have Joe Mixon at running back, you have Joe Burrow throwing the ball, you have Jamar Chase, who's probably one of the 3 best receivers in football. You have T. Higgins, probably a top 15 receiver in football. You have Tyler Boyd, in my opinion, the best number 3 receiver in football. And Hayden Hurst has been really good this year as a tight end target for them as well. They just have so many options in the passing game.
Yeah, they do have a lot of options, like you mentioned. And even if their defense struggles, you have to feel like the offense can probably pick up some of that slack there. And so I'm in on the Bengals. I predicted that they would miss the playoffs. I obviously didn't project how bad the NFL as a whole was going to be this season. And so I think I'm back in on the Bengals too. I think it's more likely than not that they will carry that division.
We can just put our Chargers love into the Bengals.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about the Chargers. So I'm not going to, at least not right now. So let's move on to Detroit traveling to Dallas. Dallas wins 24-6. By the way, is my camera like spasming on your screen? Cause
It did for a minute, but it's good now.
okay, it's still doing it, and I'm trying not to let it distract me. I don't know what's going on, but I just checked the YouTube stream, and it's not doing it there. It's just doing it in StreamYard, so who knows? But so Dallas wins 24-6. Dak's return, it was a bit of a slow start. They had back-to-back 3-and-outs to start the game. They were trailing 6-3 at halftime. And he ends up, his stat line looks good, 19-25 for 207 yards and a touchdown. They leaned on their rushing attack in this one. Their brilliant defense. They had 5 second-half turnovers, including a turnover forced on each of the last 4 drives. And so Dallas get the win. Things look bad in Detroit. All that enthusiasm, everybody that was telling you Detroit was going to be good this year because Dan Campbell sounded cool on Hard Knocks, I think that's being proven wrong right now. Aiden Hutchinson, though, it was nice to finally see him have a game. He's been largely invisible this season, aside from his 3-sack game against Washington in Week 2. He got a sack and a half in this game, including a really nice spin move sack. So nice to see Aiden Hutchinson come alive a little bit. Other than that, I don't think you take much from this game. The offense did not look good for Dallas. It was Dak's first game back, so you give him some slack there, but it is a situation worth monitoring. The offense was bad in the opener before he got hurt. It was bad in his return as well.
The Dallas defense is the best in the league, and the Detroit Lions are one of the 2 worst teams in football. And I know people don't want to hear that, but there's a reason that my favorite play of the NFL offseason was Lions under 7 wins. So they're 1-5 right now, right? They had a bye already.
Yes, I think they had their bye. I'll check it.
So they would have to go 6-5 to push that under on 7 wins. So I'm feeling pretty good about that Lions under. But yeah, I don't take much away from this game other than to say Detroit very bad, Dallas very good. I think Dallas. If you're making an argument against my Cincinnati Bengals as the fourth best team in the NFL, I think Dallas is probably that team you'd make the argument for.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to another NFC East team. That is the New York Giants, who traveled to Jacksonville. They get the win, 23-17. Daniel Jones had his fifth-year option declined. He's having the best season of his career, which just goes to show you how important the scheme you land in is. We're big draft guys. We do all of the draft stuff, but the scheme, the coaching staff you land with, the situation you land in, that is paramount. Like, would, you could look at any of these quarterbacks. How would Trevor Lawrence fare if he had landed in a better place than Jacksonville last year? How would Daniel Jones have fared if he hadn't been drafted by the Giants? There's lots of things you can look at, but at the end of the day, Daniel Jones is rushing for 50 yards a game this season, which is a career high. He has more game-winning drives, which is 5, than turnovers, 4 this year. I don't think he's the long-term answer for the Giants, but he's just another piece of evidence proving that if you have a mobile quarterback and you have a good coach, it will raise the floor of your offense to a competitive place regardless of the pieces around it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I still think this is mostly Brian Dable more than Daniel Jones, but I'm willing to say that maybe I underrated Daniel Jones through the years just due to his mobility and the floor that gives him. And we're longtime believers in mobile quarterbacks being the correct path most of the time due to the high floor that it gives you as a roster. So, I mean, this is still a game where he went 19 of 30. This is still a game where his yards per attempt is really low. He barely threw for 200 yards. But when you run for over 100, all that kind of goes out the window. So, yeah, I mean, he's been unbelievable compared to at least what I thought of him. Saquon almost looks better than what he looked like in his first year, which was huge statistically. But I don't know if the stats are better or even comparable. But in terms of the eye test, I think he's a smarter runner. And I think he seems to almost have the Jalen Hurts instinct of knowing exactly where to get on the field. I think Saquon's been awesome in both phases of the game. And I think this is really just Dable and Saquon and a pretty good defense. I think I've always been a Wink Martindale guy. I think he's a guy who Baltimore should not have let go. That's another reason that I'm lower on this Baltimore defense and team in general. I would probably like them more if they had Martindale there. So, yeah, I think that the Giants are probably a 9-win team, but maybe they're a 10 or 11-win team with some of the luck they've gotten at the end of games. But I want to have a conversation about Jacksonville. I'm a little bit nervous that this. I guess maybe I just expected a little bit much after what we saw early in the season. I guess if you would have told me before the year that they'd be 2-5, I wouldn't have been that shocked or upset with the outcome. But after some of the things we saw early in the year, man, it's disappointing to see them just choke in every potential spot to win a big game or to win a close game. And, I was hoping our guy Doug would come through for us and beat the Giants one more time because he did that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's starting to look like my Doug Peterson Coach of the Year ticket is not going to cash this year.
Well, I think it's looking like every ticket that anyone would have other than Brian Dable is not going to cash.
Yeah. The two things that are most concerning to me with Jacksonville is, one, Trevor Lawrence he displays accuracy and decision-making issues that you would not expect from him. He's thrown some horrible interceptions on throws he had no business making. He's had some downfield accuracy issues. That's issue one. Issue two for me is they just need more from their pass rush. Travon Walker was a number 1 overall pick. Josh Allen was a number 8 overall pick. They have 5 sacks combined on the year. And neither you or I like the Travon Walker pick, and we looked wrong through the first 2 weeks of the season when he started fast, but he really hasn't done anything since, and it goes back to the reason that we were critical of that to begin with. He looked like an athletic guy that had no idea how to rush the passer. And when you're going to invest that much in the trenches, with high premium draft picks, you just need more from that. And there's an element of luck at play as well. I mean, the Giants, they continue to lose close or to win close games, and the Jags continue to lose them. Like Christian Kirk has stopped on the 1 yard line on the last play of the game. On the season, if you look at point differentials, the Giants are plus 20, the Jags are plus 18. 2 points different. The Giants are 6-1 and the Jags are 2-5, and so the margins are razor thin. I did hope to see more of a leap from Jacksonville, and maybe that was unrealistic considering the dumpster fire that they were last year, the depths of how bad that roster is. Maybe they need more time than that. I'm certainly not writing, Doug off in Jacksonville. I still believe in that, but I did hope to see a little bit more, especially with the Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson connection this year.
And the funny thing with Trevor in this game is that he had some just easy throws that he missed, but then he makes some of the most incredible throws you'll see on a football field, and just darts. And his yards per attempt is still always going to be up there because he's taking chances down the field. But man, he's a confounding quarterback to evaluate because he does so much of the hard stuff so well, and he seems to do so much of the easy stuff so poorly. So he's a guy who, it's not like we were anomalies in the draft community. Everyone liked Trevor Lawrence. We're not saying that we were the only people who liked him. He went number one, and he was the projected number one pick for like 3 years. But I was throwing out some pretty lofty expectations, and I was throwing out some pretty lofty comparisons. And to keep it brief, he has not lived up to that at this point.
I didn't have him as far away QB1 as everybody else did, but that was because I said Justin Fields was closer to him, which maybe we'll get into a Justin Fields conversation here in a few minutes because Justin Fields had himself a game last night. But yeah, it's not been pretty for the Giants, but they're winning. Brian Dable, he's making the most out of nothing. They're going run heavy, play action heavy, using Jones in the running game. It's not pretty, but it's functional, and they continue to win football games. So they're 6-1 right now. They're almost certainly going to make the playoffs unless they just fall apart. And if you would have told Giants fans that they would make the playoffs this season, I don't think most of them would have even believed you.
Yeah, I don't think most of the world would have believed you.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Indianapolis at Tennessee. Tennessee wins this game 19-10. Matt Ryan threw the Titans' only touchdown pass of the day, a 76-yard strike to Andrew Adams that he returned for a touchdown. Tennessee scored 10 points off of turnovers, and they led 13-0 at half. It got a little interesting at the end, but your guy Matt Ryan, Mark, threw the ball 44 times, had 2 picks, took 3 sacks, and now the Colts have announced that they are turning to Sam Ehlinger to play quarterback moving forward. So I know you've had some takes about Matt Ryan you might want to throw out there if you want to remind the listeners.
Matt Ryan's been cooked for a decade. People give Matt Ryan this credit as if he's been this guy like that he was 10 years ago. Matt Ryan has been terrible for years now. This is not a new thing. This is not – a lot of people are talking about, how washed he looks and, oh, my God. And it's like I'm trying to pull up the stat as I'm talking here. But while I'm looking up the stat, I will just say it says a lot that the Colts are bringing in Sam Ehlinger here. I don't know if this is Frank Reich trying to save his job. I don't know if this is Chris Ballard trying to save his job up in the booth as GM. But I think it's going to, just like we talked about with Daniel Jones, I think it's going to raise the floor of this Colts offense. And I think Sam Ehlinger, I used to refer to him as a bowling ball when he was at Texas. That guy is a good red zone option. And you pair him with Jonathan Taylor, it's only going to help Jonathan Taylor because a dirty little secret that people don't like to talk about with mobile quarterbacks is that they almost invariably help the efficiency of the running game outside of them, independent of them, not just their rushing. But you look at efficiency with, I always go back to Alfred Morris with RG3. RG3 was able to, and RG3, by the way, Shane Half Twitter follower. RG3, when he was such a stud in his rookie year in Washington, was able to make a stiff like Alfred Morris, like a 1,600-yard rusher. He was rushing for like 5 yards per carry. And there's been a lot of situations like that. And obviously, I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor's a stiff. What I'm saying is, I think it raises the floor of what Jonathan Taylor brings. It raises the floor of what your offense brings as a whole. It makes me kind of want to buy into the Colts a little bit. But on the other side of things here, the Tennessee Titans are just ho-hum, the same every year. People wanted to bury them. Shane put them at like 27 in the power rankings in week 2 or 3, and I got upset with them. And I think we talked about it on the show. And the Titan, Mike Vrabel, is not to be doubted. I think he's one of the 5 to 7 best head coaches in football.
Yeah, at this point, I think you can just the Titans, you can pencil them in as a playoff team that will be embarrassed in the first round every year until they get a quarterback. Derrick Henry, 128 yards on 30 attempts. It's his third straight game with 100-plus yards, so their offense is right where it wants to be, riding Derrick Henry, grinding out victories. And to your point on Sam Ehlinger, that's why I put this game right after the Giants game. I wanted to mention that the mobile quarterback, it raises the floor. And I think that's what the Colts are doing here. The Colts offense will function better with Sam Ehlinger. And as ridiculous as that might sound like to say, it will. Because the Colts offensive line is not good. The receivers are not good. Ehlinger is not going to just be a statue in the pocket like Matt Ryan. He can evade some pressure. Sometimes now when your offensive line loses, instead of being a strip sack, it might be a 10-yard gain. When your receivers can't get open, instead of being a strip sack, Ehlinger's going to get out of the pocket and throw the ball away. He's going to be able to do things Matt Ryan can't do. And is he going to make stupid decisions throwing the ball? Absolutely. The net return is going to be a positive for the Colts offense, though.
I found the stat I was looking for while I was talking, but something I wrote in my Philly Influencer column, which, by the way, you can check out. I think it'll be out on Thursday with my picks this week. But Matt Ryan, over the last decade, is 67, 83, and 1. And he's also 28, 42, and 1 against the spread over the last 5 years. But the other one was just a straight up number. I know this is not a gambling show. But Matt Ryan has been washed for quite some time. I made the proclamation, I think it was in 2017. Actually, no, it was 2018. It was whatever the first year they didn't make the playoffs was, that he would never quarterback a winning team again. I was getting nervous at times this year when they were eking out dumb wins like that win against Kansas City, which is still the flukiest win in the history of football. But I'm happy to announce that I am no longer nervous. Sam Ehlinger is the new quarterback. Matt Ryan, I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I can stop hating the Colts and betting against them every week.
All right, moving on. Green Bay travels to Washington. They lose 21-23. Your guy, Taylor Heineke, he had a rough start. Started 2 of 9 for 21 yards with a pick 6. After halftime, though, he was 13 of 16 and led scoring drives of 74, 72, and 61 yards. The Packers' offense, Mark, is offensive. Like, their first third down conversion came with under 6 minutes left in the game, and it was thanks to a penalty. And they blew a 14-3 lead to Taylor Heineke. Like, they've now lost 3 games in a row to the Giants, quarterbacked by Daniel Jones, the Jets, quarterbacked by Zach Wilson, who is worse Daniel Jones, and Taylor Heineke, who is worse Zach Wilson? I don't know. Rodgers had 47 passing yards on 15 attempts in the first half. So the good news, though, for Packers fans, it does lighten up for the Packers, who face the Bills next week on the road after the Bills had a bye. So good news for Packers fans.
I will say this isn't obviously this isn't a preview show for Week 8. Packers are 10.5-point underdogs in that game. I do like Green Bay to cover that spread. I think their defense will keep it a little closer than people think. But Green Bay's offense is a joke. It is an absolute joke. And, you know, Matt LaFleur has been extremely successful to start his NFL career as a coach. But how do you give Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon 12 carries in this game? How do you give Aaron Jones 8 carries? They're your 2 most dynamic offensive weapons. and you just don't use them at all because I guess Aaron Rodgers wants to throw the ball 2 yards down the field every time. I don't get what this Packers offense is. Aaron Rodgers came out after the game and said that he, I don't know who it was, his quarterback's coach, is their offensive coordinator, or someone in the Packers offensive staff grades out his game every week and gave him his highest grade of the season this week. And I saw someone being like, fire that coach immediately. like, what are you doing bringing that? And why would you say that if you're Aaron Rodgers too? It's just like, I don't. I said with Tampa, I still somehow believe that they're going to turn it around. I just don't feel that way with Green Bay. This is not a team that's going to turn it around.
No, I don't. I think you can stick a fork in Green Bay. They're
I
done.
agree.
Okay, moving on. The Jets travel to Denver. They win 16-9. Man, this was a devastating game though for the Jets. Breece Hall suffers a season-ending ACL injury. Elijah Vera Tucker, who they have moved all over their offensive line, and he's played great anywhere they've put him, is out for the year with a tricep injury. And so it is a win. It's a devastating win, though, for the Jets. Zach Wilson was abysmal in this game, as he's been every game since he was drafted. Real talk, the Jets should call the Patriots about Mac Jones. I wouldn't give much for him, but Zach Wilson's done. Like, they can only win games. The margins to win games with Zach Wilson at quarterback were already small. And now losing Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker, I don't know that they can sustain that they can continue to win with Zach Wilson playing quarterback.
Yeah, Broncos defense is really good, by the way. It's a shame that they just have a completely inept coach and offense that will never let them compete. But
you know what's funny, though? The offense looked exactly the same with Brett Rippon as it does with Russell Wilson. Just sidebar.
Oh, yeah, it looked the exact – I mean – well, Russell Wilson's been a bottom 5 quarterback this year, pretty undoubtedly, if you look at the numbers there. So not shocking that there wasn't a drop-off. I don't even think the line changed, actually, in Vegas when they announced that Russ was officially out, which is so – I saw people joking about that. But, yeah, I mean, this is not a game you walk out – even without the injuries, quite honestly, this wouldn't have been a game that you walk out feeling good about the Jets. Like even if they didn't have massive injuries. So the Jets are a fraud, in my opinion. I think they'll be exposed in short order. I don't think this is a team that makes the playoffs.
And one person that will not be exposed, may never be exposed, is Sauce Gardner. Targeted 9 times in this game. He allowed 3 receptions for 8 yards. His completion percentage allowed over expectation this year, negative 17.5%. Just an absolute stud that they got in Sauce Gardner.
The best corner in the NFL right now.
You could make a legitimate argument that Sauce Gardner is the best cornerback in the NFL. And that sounds absurd to say. He is playing at that high of a level right now. Now, cornerback, there are peaks and valleys to playing cornerback, and he obviously didn't have valleys in college. He will have those valley moments in the NFL. So we got to see how he responds to those.
Unless he's just Deion Sanders. Unless he's just like the greatest of all time.
It's possible.
In play. I'm just saying, it's in play. It is in play for Sauce Gardner. Everything's in play for Sauce Gardner.
Yeah. The other thing coming out of this game is the Jets, following the Breece Hall injury, they traded for James Robinson from the Jaguars for a 6th-round pick to pair with Michael Williams. I loved that move. Not to turn this into an Eagles thing, but the Eagles should have picked up the phone and given a 6th or a 5th for Robinson. I love that move.
Yeah, there's no downside there at all.
Okay, moving on. Houston at Las Vegas. Las Vegas wins 38-20. The Raiders did not pick up Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. They played him in the Hall of Fame game. He rushed for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns this week. It's the 3rd time he's been over 100 yards this season. So, phenomenal turnaround from Josh Jacobs. I don't know what his future looks like, if it's in Las Vegas, if it's somewhere else, but certainly the Patriots-style offense that they are running, that suits Josh Jacobs' skill set. On the flip side, Dameon Pierce for Houston had 92 yards on 20 carries, 4 receptions for 25 yards, and so they look like they have a good running back as well. The Las Vegas offense looked good, I thought, coming out of the bye. And it was against Houston, but it looked good. It took the requisite step. They have New Orleans up next. If they beat New Orleans, they would be 3-4. Then they go Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Denver.
Wow.
They should win all of those games. If they win those games, they would be 6-4, and suddenly they could be playing themselves back into a wild card spot in the AFC after a historically bad start. So interesting to keep an eye on them. I know the odds are stacked against them with the way they started, but I kind of maybe starting to think that the Raiders could eke out a 7 seed or something this season.
That's interesting. I'm not quite as high on the Raiders, I don't think. I think they're probably in the same class of Indy and Jacksonville. Indy with what I think a higher floor offense for Indy with Ellinger, and Jacksonville that I'm hopeful will take steps as the season progresses, I guess. But I'm starting to have some serious questions about McDaniels. Obviously, this week was a step in the right direction. I'll be quite honest. This was not a game I was focused on or laser focused on this week for sure. I didn't have a bet on this game. It's funny. I felt like this was a tight game for a long time. I'm not looking at the box score right now as we talk. I'm going to pull it up, but I felt like this was a tight game for a really long time. And then I was focusing on the Phillies, focusing on a couple other games that were going on. And then I looked, and it was like 38-20 all of a sudden.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm high on the Raiders. I did think their offense looked good, though. I do think they've got a little bit of a favorable schedule, so it's possible. We'll see if they can keep it together.
Houston entered the fourth. I'm sorry, not to cut in. Houston entered the fourth quarter with a lead in this game. They're up 20-17 going into the fourth.
Yeah, it took them a while to get going, and then Jacobs kind of took over, which, to be honest, and I really expected more from Derek Carr this year, especially teaming up with Devontae Adams. But if Josh Jacobs can bring that sort of a rushing presence, I do think it will help out their vertical passing game a lot. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll wait it out and see. We'll wait and collect another data point next week, see how they do against New Orleans, a team they should certainly run out of the building if they want to be considered competitive in the AFC.
Yeah, I will say, from what I did see from this game, I liked what I saw from Davis Mills for the first time in a long time.
This was his best game of the career, or not of his career, his best game of the year for sure.
Yeah, this looked like last year Davis Mills, like when they actually let him free, and he was throwing for 300 yards with regular ease last year. And then this year to see him do this after weeks of kind of dinking and dunking and being afraid to take chances, even though he did throw a pick six at the end of the game. I did think he, from the first half, which is most of what I saw from this game, I thought he was pretty impressive.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Seattle at Los Angeles. Seattle beats the Chargers 37-23. Kenneth Walker is going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. No doubt. Breece Hall out. Kenneth Walker will win the award. He had 168 yards on 23 carries with 2 touchdowns as Seattle wins to take first place in the division, which is just crazy. Mark, Seattle could be good. Like, their defense is starting to play a little better. Geno Smith continues to play well. I did not expect this from the Seahawks this year. And just as an aside, like, did Seattle have the best draft class in like the last decade? Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, both starting tackles and playing well. Like, if you draft 2 starting offensive tackles in the same draft, that's got to be like a phenomenal draft class. And that's before you mention Kenneth Walker, Tariq Woolen. Like, the Seahawks are playing so well. Their draft class is looking phenomenal right now.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen, one of our guys. It's cool to see how good he's been for Seattle. But I'm trying to not go too crazy with this result. The Chargers are just a shell of themselves at this point. Herbert clearly is playing hurt. They have so many guys out, and then they lose Mike Williams and J.C. Jackson in this game to what seems like pretty serious injuries. They just aren't themselves. I'm trying to not assign the Seahawks credit for beating what I think is a good team in my head, because I think that they beat a shell of the Chargers. So that's not taking anything away from from what the Seahawks have done. They've been one of the more surprising teams in football, and Geno has been probably a top 10 quarterback in football in the first 7 weeks of this season, which is pretty unbelievable.
Let
D-
Gino cook.
yeah, it's all they needed to ever do. But DK, I do believe left this game with a severe like injury. It seemed I think he got carted off. So haven't heard any
He
updates on that.
he will not need surgery, and
Oh, okay.
Pete Carroll did not rule out the possibility of him playing this weekend. So
Wow.
we'll
Because
see. We'll see what the actual injury report says tomorrow, because that could be coach speak. But even just the fact that he's not ruled out for this weekend, even if he doesn't play, even if he doesn't end up playing, means that is a lot less serious injury than it looked like.
yeah, that's because it definitely was concerning and definitely scary on the field. This was a game I bet the over in. This was one of my bigger bets of the week was the over in this game. So I enjoyed this game very much.
Yeah, and I'm boycotting talking about the Chargers. I'm just not gonna do
Yeah,
it. Joe Lombardi needs to be fired. If Brandon Staley doesn't realize that, he needs to be fired too. And there's nothing else to say. Just they're they're underachieving due to injuries and awful coaching.
Keenan Allen also came back for this game and left this game in the
Mm-hmm.
second quarter. So I guess he re-aggravated his injury. There was also some rumors about some discontent in the Chargers locker room, and Keenan Allen was kind of leading the charge in that. And then Brandon Staley tried to come out and be like, "Yeah, we're best friends, and it's awesome." And I think he's on the hot seat.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. For the sake of Justin Herbert, get him out of there.
Agreed.
Okay, Kansas City at San Francisco. The Chiefs win 44-23. Patrick Mahomes threw an interception on the opening drive, and then he scored a touchdown on 6 of the next 7 offensive possessions. McCole Hardman had 2 rushing touchdowns, wherever that came from. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 111 receiving yards. On the flip side, you had Christian McCaffrey making his debut in San Francisco. He gets 62 yards on 10 touches, which, by the way, such an awful trade. Somebody ran the math, and that basically came out to the equivalent of like the 10th overall pick that the 49ers sent for Christian McCaffrey. So, awful trade there. That's all I really have to say about the 49ers. On the Chiefs side, it was weird. They finally named Isaiah Pacheco the starter, and then he played 9 snaps in this game. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, just stop with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Stop with Jarrett McKinnon. This should be Pacheco's show. He's by far the best running back on the team. And while we're there with like the little cute things that Andy Reid does that we let slide because he's such a good coach and his team is so good and it doesn't matter, but Sky Moore can't be your punt returner anymore. Like, it's time to put somebody else back there. He cost you the Colts game fumbling that punt. He fumbled in this game and it didn't matter, but it's time to get somebody else back there to return punts.
Yeah, we've talked about this multiple times this year. Their special teams is a problem, but yeah, I don't have much to say about this game other than Patrick Mahomes is going to Patrick Mahomes. Like, this was one of those games where you sit back and watch, and you're like, this guy is a football wizard. This guy is the best playing the game right now, and he's able to turn guys like Juju and MVS into studs. And obviously, Travis Kelce helps a lot with that as well, but it doesn't even matter what their running game is to a certain degree most of the time. It's going to matter against teams like Buffalo, but you mentioned Pacheco. He was still the leading rusher for Kansas City in this game with 8 carries. So it's pretty funny to see how they just disregard the running game, even in a game they were up pretty big in for most of the second half. This is a game where I look at it and I say, yeah, the Chiefs are one of the 3 best teams, and there seems to be a pretty big gap between 3rd and 4th or 3rd or wherever San Fran is. So I'm trying to not overreact to this and make any generalizations about San Fran. I think they'll still be fine down the stretch, and I think they'll still probably be like I said. I'm obsessed. I think I might make a power rankings to see where I'm at with Shane. Maybe we'll do that next week on the pod. But if I was doing Cincy for Dallas 5 after that top three, I think I'd somehow put San Fran 6. Like I think San Fran's still probably one of the 6 to 8 best teams in the NFL. And this loss doesn't make me feel any worse about that. They're missing a lot of guys as well. So once they get healthy, I think they'll be right back in the thick of things. But they're not on that level clearly of where Kansas City's at right now.
Yeah. Well, Mark, just like the 49ers have tried unsuccessfully
I know.
for two
What you dare
seasons
say.
to move on from Jimmy G, we have tried
Yeah,
unsuccessfully for 2 seasons to have a podcast under an hour. As we just crossed over the hour threshold. So,
that's
those of you
unbelievable.
listening Wednesday mornings in your car, rejoice. We got 2 games left. We're gonna get you all the way to work. It's gonna be great.
It's
So
unbelievable.
the bit lives on, Mark.
Oh my
So let's
god.
move on to the Sunday night football game. Pittsburgh travels to Miami. Miami wins this game 16-10. Miami had recorded 1 interception going into this game, and then they intercepted Kenny Pickett 3 times. And to be honest, Tua makes his first game back. I thought Tua had a pretty bad game, a pretty bad showing. Now, it's been several weeks since he played. His stat line doesn't look terrible. He had 3 to 4 passes that were dropped interceptions by the Steelers defense. So the defense for the Steelers certainly let him off the hook a few times, but Miami came out, they started strong, and then they just totally faded, but their defense is able to keep the Steelers out of the end zone at the end of the game when it mattered. I look at Pittsburgh in this game because I have more takeaways for Pittsburgh than Miami. It's the first game back for Tua. I need to see how he looks over a couple weeks. For Pittsburgh, the scheme and the offensive line are the biggest issues for their offense. Like, it's serious. Watching this game on film, it really looks like the Steelers run about 8 plays all game. It's just such a limited offense, and it's so sad. It's so hard to watch.
To be quite honest, I didn't see a snap of this game. This was a game that I absolutely went to bed a little bit early on Sunday. Did not stay up for Steelers Dolphins. I will just throw out Dolphins are 4-0 and Tua starts and finishes a game. Thank you very much. They're probably in like the top 10 of whatever power rankings you have to do, even if he didn't look very good in this game, and even if Miami wasn't all the way back. I think Miami is a team that I expect to make the playoffs, and this kind of squashed any hope of maybe the Steelers getting back involved in a bad division race. This is a really tough loss for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And they got a date with the Eagles next week, so they
Yeah.
definitely needed this one. So, okay, let's move on to Monday Night Football. This was a game that was good for our draft takes. We'll say that. So, Chicago goes to New England. They win 33-14. And Mark, who knew that scheming to your quarterback strengths would make your offense look better? Who knew that when you have a bad offensive line and a mobile quarterback and you design running plays for him, it will make the offense look better? Justin Fields goes 13-21 for 179 yards and a touchdown. He did have an interception. It was off of a deflection. He rushed for 82 yards and a touchdown. The Bears were 11 of 18 on third downs. And let's be honest, the Bears offense looked good in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields made them an absolute nightmare on third downs. They made a couple plays on third downs where, I mean, you get to 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, and your defense already kind of mentally is off the field, I think. And they made sure that you couldn't feel that way because they were converting not just on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, but on 3rd and long and 3rd and medium. And that's really the key to this game here. And, there was the moment, obviously, where Mac gets booed off the field and the Bears are up 10-0. Zappy comes in and the Pats go up 14-10. I think everybody in the country thought New England was going to run away with that game and that was going to turn into a blowout and Bailey Zappy was going to be the Monday Night Football story. But it wasn't the case. Justin Fields became the story, and Justin Fields probably played his best game of the year. 180 yards passing, 82 yards rushing. Yeah, I mean, he was their leading rusher. He was their most efficient rusher. He is an absolute threat with the ball in his hands, especially when he's rushing. So this was a really, really good thing to see from Justin Fields because there was a stretch there where I was really getting down on him, and I knew it wasn't his fault. And I was saying even on here when I was criticizing him that I know it's unfair, and I know it's the worst possible situation of all time for a young quarterback, but I just want to see a little bit more. And I think he showed me a lot more in this game, so I'm definitely happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just our Justin Fields draft takes that looked good in this game either, but Jaquan Brisker, who we both had in our top 25. He has been a force this season. He had the one-handed interception that got Mac Jones benched. I don't care what Bill says. Mac Jones got benched for Bailey Zappi in this game. Even at halftime, he was like, "Yeah, we're going to put them both back in there," and he never put Mac back in. Did you see where somebody they pulled the video and it showed that pass by Mac Jones that got intercepted, it hit the Skycam wire?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so apparently that pass, it tipped the Skycam wire. You can see the ball start to wobble after it hit it. And
That's
so
hilarious.
Bill Belichick benched Mac Jones, quarterback he took in the first round last year, for a fourth round rookie because a pass hit a Skycam wire, which is just, I don't know. But Jaquan Brisker, we both had him in our top 25. Kyler Gordon also had an interception. We both had an early second round grade on him. So, I mean, I don't know. It's almost like we could be running the Bears and it would be going well.
Yeah, I mean, Shaquan Brisker, that was the guy I was looking at in the 20s, and he fell to the second round. He's definitely, and I don't think this is the first time he's flashed. I've watched Bears games, and he's jumped off the screen to me before. So,
Oh yeah,
good
he's
to
been
see Brisker.
phenomenal this year. He's been really, really good, not just in this game.
Yeah. I heard that his PFF rank or his PFF grades have been really, really good as well.
Yeah. So Mac Jones, first of all, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, I'm pretty sure are like the same person. Like, if we could just combine them, just, I don't know, like Mick Zappi, I don't know, but Bailey Jones, that's not as cool.
I knew
Let's
a
go
Bailey
with Mac
Jones.
Zappi.
I knew
Did
a
you
Bailey
really?
Jones growing up. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope I didn't just insult their name, but I like Mac Zappi better. McZappy. It sounds like a McDonald's meal. But what is going on with Mac Jones? Do you think are the Patriots done here? Like, should teams be picking up the phone and calling the Patriots about Mac Jones? Because I'll be honest, the Jets, they could use an upgrade at quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know if Mac Jones is worth trading for. To be quite honest, I don't know. Last year I kind of over corrected myself, I'd say, for some of my Mac Jones slander. So I did think he was very passable last year. He has not been passable this year. And a lot of people are going to blame that on Matt Patricia, and I think there's probably some merit to that. But man, he has definitely played some pretty tough to defend football at times this year. And Bailey Zappi at least gave them a spark. I don't know what I would do if I was Belichick. I'd probably lean Zappi, and maybe that's because maybe you think you could get something in a trade for Mac. But this is a really tough situation for Bill.
I know what I would do if I was Bill. I would retire and say it's somebody else's problem, like he should have done a couple of years ago. This is why you don't trade, or this is why you don't draft Mac Jones in the first round to begin with. I mean, it goes back to conversations we've had before. We've already had it on this podcast. You don't build your franchise around an immobile quarterback in today's NFL. You just don't do it. There's no reason to. If you want to take a day 2 or a day 3 flyer on a statue pocket quarterback, that's fine. If that guy hits, that's exceptional value. Even if you go and you draft a pocket quarterback who is a good starter in the NFL in the first round, it's still just not a good value. The game is all about mobility. It's about athleticism. You can do so much more with a worse mobile quarterback than you can with the really good pocket passers, and offenses are figuring that out. Defenses are figuring it out. The Mac Jones pick didn't make sense when they made it. It's never going to make sense. It was just a bad pick. If you can't move as a quarterback, I'm not putting a first-round grade on you. I don't care how good you throw the football.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And, I can't even really think of someone who proves the an exception to prove the rule wrong here.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's been guys in the past,
In the
that were
past, yeah.
pocket passers, but in the last 2, 3 drafts and moving forward, who are the young guys that are top quarterbacks that aren't able to move? Justin Fields is the closest that we get, I think, but it's not that Justin Fields can't move.
You mean Herbert? Herbert.
Or sorry, yeah, Herbert, not Fields. It's a late night. I've been mixing up my Justins that I love. Yeah, Justin Herbert is not the most mobile guy, but he's not immobile. He's not a
No.
statue. He's not like Mac Jones. He can move, and he's just so good at processing. Like that's his superpower. But I think he's the closest you're gonna get to a statue quarterback, and I really don't think that even applies to him.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
So, anyway, so Justin Fields, that was fun to watch. I'm gonna be pulling for the Bears. I would love for Justin Fields to turn out to be good, and not just because I wanted to prove my draft take right, but I just fell in love with watching Justin Fields play when I was watching tape of him getting ready for that draft. I would love to see some of that translate to the NFL.
Yeah, I love mobile quarterbacks. It's an absolute. I mean, he's electric to watch when he's going right, and when he's making the throws that he was making last night. I mean, he made a throw to Cole Kmet that is probably the best throw I've seen him make as an NFL passer. So if you make a couple of those throws combined with some of the plays he can make on the ground, he can enter that Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts territory of must watch football.
I just said Justin Herbert is like the closest thing to like this immobile quarterback. He ran a 4.69 at the combine.
Yeah, exactly.
4.69 40. I didn't even realize he was that fast. So I disregard. I'll disregard that whole thing. I retract it. There's no statue quarterbacks in the NFL that I would want right now.
And people will throw Trevor out there. Trevor can move as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying you need to be Jalen Hurts and run the ball 12 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to run the ball at all. If you can roll out, if you can run the RPOs because there's a threat you'll run that 1 or 2 times you pull it, that's good enough. You just need to be able to move.
Yeah, we might be seeing that with Stafford a little bit, catching up to him right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, all right, well, that is going to about wrap it up for our Week 7 review show. Mark, before we get out of here, do you got any final thoughts for us?
Nothing really. Just my usual plug. Every Saturday, Fox Sports The Gambler on iHeartRadio. This week, 11 to 12:30. We'll have Bob Wankel on to talk about the Phils, and that will be after Game 1 and previewing Game 2. We'll be previewing college football, and we'll be doing a Week 8 preview on the NFL on that show. So check it out and keep it locked to my Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ because I'll have my college football and NFL picks column dropping whenever I get a couple hours.
All right. Yeah. Tune in to Mark's stuff. Make sure you're giving him a follow on Twitter there. My final thoughts is it's a busy weekend coming up. Call of Duty comes out on Friday. Me and Kyler Murray are both going to be grinding away on Call of Duty. The biggest Age of Empires, which is the other game I'm into, Age of Empires 2 tournament, its finals are on Saturday, so I'll have that on Saturday. Eagles on Sunday, and then we turn around and have the Eagles again on Thursday night against the Texans. So a lot of stuff going on this week, a lot of stuff to get through for the week, but I'm excited about all of it. And, I'm excited for all the Phillies fans out there. The Phillies make the Stanley Cup, and so we'll be pulling for them. Pulling for them to go.
You're talking about video games. I've got a 4-hour date that I have to carve out of my night every night for the next week now, Shane. Making the World Series is hard work.
Oh, is it the World Series now?
Yeah, that's what they're calling it nowadays.
They keep changing the names on me.
It's the World Series of poker, yeah.
As Nick Sirianni would say, it is a good time to be a Philadelphia fan. So we'll sign off with that. Go Birds. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 77 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode that will definitely not be under an hour long.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can give us a follow on Twitter. I'm at halfandhalf_TPL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. So from me, from Mark, and from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.